Today we have Andrew from Project 86. This is an interview that I've been looking forward to for a while. Project 86, Andrew, is one of those bands that I've been listening to for years. And I'm just like super, super stoked. Like, oh, we interview a lot of bands that might be like a newer band, so we haven't like listened to them a ton or for a lot of years. There might be some bands that we interview that we really haven't listened to them a lot. Project 86 for Cullen and I is one of those bands that we've been listening to for a long time and a lot. And so we're just super, super stoked to chat more with you. But how are you doing today, Andrew? How's life?
I'm doing great, man. Just busy like everybody else. Lots going on, a lot of spinning tops, a lot of irons in the fire. Let me see how
Heck
many more
yeah.
cliches I can use, but it's really cool to come on here with you guys and talk a little bit about both the history of the band and what's been going on lately. So
Yeah,
appreciate you for
absolutely.
having me.
I
Yeah,
will
thank
say
you.
before we get into history stuff, I do have one personal story about Project 86, and that is I think it was probably like maybe 2008 or 2009. Cullen and I went to a show in Brookings, South Dakota. Cullen and I grew up in Northeast South Dakota, so like middle of
Okay.
nowhere. And
Okay.
you guys, I don't remember where it was, probably like some convention center or something.
Yep.
But we went to see you guys play, and I forget all the bands, but you were playing, and then I think like Disciple was a band that played, like, I think they were like the headlining band of the show.
Mhm.
And so we saw you guys play. I think you came out with like one of those like I forget how to, like, Guy Fox or whatever.
Yep.
Is that you know what
Oh,
you know
okay.
what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like one of those
Yeah.
masks or whatever.
Yeah.
You came out on stage, played your set. It was unbelievable. And then later that night, when Disciple played, and Cullen and I are front stage, like it's one of those stages that's probably like chest high. And
Right.
at one point, I got a little too gregarious, and was headbanging and hit my head on the monitor right on the edge of the stage. And at first I was like, oh, that kind of like hurt or whatever. And then all of a sudden I felt like all this liquid coming down my face. And I'm like, that's not just sweat, I don't think. And I put my hand on my face and I just see red all over my
Wow.
hand. I'm like, oh shit. And so I go immediately to like this woman that was like kind of working by the stage or whatever. And she gets me a towel. And then I go in the back outside of the venue. And there was like some like person who was like running merch or whatever. But she was like, I'm a nurse. And so I can help you out. And she looks at my cut and she was like, oh, you definitely need stitches. So
Oh.
Cullen runs me to the emergency room really quick. I get stitches. We come back thinking like maybe Disciples playing their like last couple songs, and they were done. So they were like tearing down
Okay.
merch or whatever.
I do
But
remember most specifically though, as we were going to the ER, I said, at least we got to see Project 86. That's what we came for.
that's right.
Cool.
So even though I didn't bust my head open at a Project 86 show,
You did.
you guys did play. And so it was just a memorable moment, one of many between Cullen and I.
That's crazy. And what strikes me is the BFFness that's
Totally.
I mean, that's just
that has obviously been going on for like 15 years
Oh yeah.
yes, yeah,
And
between
longer.
you guys. Yeah,
For
just
yeah.
sure.
it wasn't even a thought, man. You drove me to the emergency room.
That's
You
right.
were the guy.
That's right. So
It was a
anyway,
blast.
well, let's talk about Project 86. Let's talk about some of those early years. You guys are a band that started back in, I think it was like the late 90s, right? Kind of like
Yeah,
96, 97 or so.
yeah,
Yeah, talk
96.
about some of those early years. Like, how did you get into music? How did you get started playing Project 86?
It's a great question, man. Yeah, it's been so long, but the time has gone so quickly. Believe it or not, when you're just looking forward to the next show, the next record, the next thing that you're writing or whatever, it just the time just flies by. It's amazing to talk about. It's been so many years. Yeah, 96. It really took a couple of years to put the band together. I spent 2 years plus trying to find bandmates or the right bandmates. We moved through a few guys during the early years before settling on a lineup.
Sure.
And right off the bat, our very first show, which was in Orange County in Southern California, we all in one way or another came out of the Orange County heavy music scene, like the underground
And there
hardcore
were so many
scene
at the
and
time too. It's
such.
kind of unbelievable. I mean, like Thrice being probably one of the more notable ones too. And there's so many great bands that came out of the Orange County heavy music scene in those 90s.
Yeah, yeah. There were always shows every weekend. I actually just went last week to Indecision Records 30-year anniversary. It was like Throwdown and
Yeah.
Unbroken, a bunch of other
Wow.
bands, ton of bands that were around during that time. It's amazing how different heavy underground heavy music is now and how much it's evolved. it's like I'm watching all these hardcore bands that were considered really heavy in the mid '90s, and it just doesn't. It sounds like pop punk or something now. It's just so different.
It's true.
Yeah. So the main thing was, if I were to just touch a couple of highlights from the early days, when we played our first show, we had a great response because I think we did a lot of, I don't know, pre-gaming legwork before we played our first show and just trying to create a buzz in our area about what we were trying to do. And we had a really great turnout to our first couple of shows, and that just sort of propelled us forward quickly, I think, into a record deal and getting tours and such. It was a different era because there weren't very many bands, and all you really needed to do was get the word out via flyering and telling your friends at school, and you have at least a couple hundred people show up to the show. It's just such a different world now. It's amazing. Sound like saying that, but the project were really characterized by just excitement about playing live shows and trying to carve out a niche in Southern California, which happened pretty quickly for us.
Understandably so. I mean, you guys' sound is pretty distinct, I think, and I think more importantly, lyrically, Project 86 has always had it, right? I mean, you've done it, man, forever.
I mean, I'm biased, of course, and though I would love to sit here and tell you confidently how great I feel about all the lyrics that have been written over the years. I do a podcast as well on Patreon. This is a shameless plug. We have a Patreon community for the bands, just patreon.com/P8625. I spent a lot of time going through old lyrics and picking them apart on this podcast and talking about things I don't like. So I'm a perfectionist. So I'll literally write something and then a couple of weeks go by, or it'll just be finished. And then I'll go back and look at it and be like, what was I thinking? What? So even songs that I think people would be mortified to hear that I'm second guessing, I pick apart all the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, you got to be your most harsh critic, right?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am. I win that title.
Yeah, I think you're probably not going to be a great lyric writer if you aren't that.
I mean, I would love to sit down with guys that I respect from a lyric writing standpoint and hear how they feel about songs that they wrote 10 years ago. That would be a fun podcast. Like, get four guys together who are in that similar job description. Maybe you have a small to medium to even large size following and being known for lyrics or whatever, and see the process and how they actually feel about things. I think you might find that they are more often than not, like me, like dissatisfied with what they've come up with.
Yeah.
Yeah. We interview a lot of bands that like came out of like the Tooth and Nail solid state world. And, that's like the world that Cullen and I grew up in. And for a lot of those people, like their faith has really changed quite a bit. And so to like ask them like how they relate to the lyrics when they wrote those lyrics at a point where they probably don't even really much know that person anymore, or they're very different than that person 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's really interesting how they relate to those lyrics, because some people are really open to it. They are like, you know what, that was just me then. Some people are like very harsh critics of themselves back 20 years ago or whatever. So it's really interesting to hear how people relate to themselves, especially lyric writers.
Yeah, would you like me to comment on that?
Yeah, please do.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, given what I just said in terms of being a perfectionist and looking back and everything's through like that revisionist lens, just from like a creative standpoint, there are many things that I would do over. There are many things I laugh at. There are many things I go, wow, that's dated or whatever. But from, I guess we're talking about faith and art and making music and such. I talk about this a lot on and off my own podcasts. I would say on a personal note, my faith is probably a lot deeper now than it was when we started, which I think is maybe a different direction that what a lot of heavy bands that came out of that scene might articulate.
Totally.
if I'm going to be really frank, I think it was a lot cooler to be a Christian band in the, foundational years of this scene.
Yeah.
The 90s, the early 2000s, mid 2000s or whatever. And I think, I don't know if I can pinpoint a year, but in recent history, it's become a lot less cool to be a Christian, and play heavy music, whether it's in the underground scene, but definitely in the mainstream sense. I don't know that it was ever cool in the mainstream sense. So there were bands that came out of the faith-based scene that made a splash commercially, but I don't know that they ever succeeded in making Jesus cool. You know what I mean? Inherently, if you come out of this world, or you play the Christian festival circuit, or you're known for being a faith-based band, that usually works against you in terms of the ceiling and potential for exposure for your band, or it just knocks you down a notch or two in terms of people taking you seriously. And that's something that Project 86 has always fought with and struggled with and had a hard time with, even when we were on a major label and touring primarily in that world years ago. It's something I've always struggled with, but there's always, I think, been a genuine desire on a personal level to live out, a real sense of faith. That hasn't changed. I think for me, though, I've always wanted to make music that's just taken seriously, like anyone else.
Yeah.
I was joking about this over this last weekend. We were playing some shows and made a comment to the guys in my band. It was just really off, like, it was just random. We were walking from, one side of a festival to the other. And I said, I remember when I first started this thing thinking, after going to shows back in the day, that this would be really cool, to start a band, but make it more, oriented around faith. And then shortly after I got into it, and I was playing my 12th show in Indiana in front of, 18 kids at some kind of youth thing, and I'm like, oh, wait a second, what did I sign up for here? And then you get pigeonholed, right? And especially if you do more any kind of touring in that realm, or the more you do things in that world, in the CCM kind of world, the more you get sort of stuck there, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's been the hardest thing in doing Project 86 all these years. It's like, you want to not be stuck, and yet there's such a contingent of people that genuinely love your band, that come from that world, and just balancing those two things.
Well, and it seems like you have that conviction of faith too, where you don't want to lose that part of the band either. So it's like, I want to have this conviction, and also it seems to be pigeonholing me at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like a double-edged sword in a way.
Yeah, it is, for sure. And the conclusion that I came to long ago is, I'm just going to be honest, or try to be, in the music, in the lyrics, in the presentation, and people can do what they want with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if this is any advice, but the way I tell people about our podcast all the time is that we're not a Christian podcast. We're just Christians in a podcast. I don't know. That might help. That might help you out on all that. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's the age-old discussion is, are you a Christian band, or are you Christians in a band? And I just kind of go, what's the difference? It's just semantics. Just listen to the music. If you like the music, if it inspires you, who cares? Who cares what it's marketed as?
Yeah, right? It's so strange that we draw those lines in the first place. But like the church was drawing its own lines around music that it deemed acceptable, and that it deemed not acceptable. And so I almost feel like, Christian culture itself kind of created this boundary that made it so that
definitely,
the message of the very positive message of a lot of Christian influenced bands never made it out beyond the audience that it was marketing to, and that it probably should have gotten to the ears of. So it's just frustrating to see that,
Yeah. I mean, and you're getting to the spiritual core of what, music, and a more aggressive or rock music or extreme music is. And there is a clash of ideologies going on, whether or not you acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And you're either, lamenting a lack of hope, or celebrating the presence of it. And some people don't want the celebration of any sort of hope in the music that they're listening to enhance the way they feel, right?
Yeah.
So it's a large discussion, but I think about it all the time, still to this day.
Yeah. You know, something that I don't want to talk about religion the entire time. That's not my goal here, but I'm kind of fascinated by your own personal journey and how it kind of influenced you throughout your years and now. Because if I remember right, you grew up Catholic, right?
Yeah, I did.
And then kind of fell into the evangelical scene.
Yeah. I ended up in Southern California in Orange County, my junior year of high school. The first group of people I became friends with were the home Bible study crew from my high school. I'd never even heard of such a thing. By that point, I had renounced church, not God. I always thought of God as being independent from church. I thought church was just something you did, growing up. But the connection to God was always sort of in a roundabout way, or it was like indirectly connected, So, I found this group of people that were nice to me, the friends that I made in going to a new high school, and went and checked out their Bible study that they bugged me about for months to check out, and finally went and had a spiritual experience there, and really felt different after that, and really changed my perspective. It was a genuine conversion experience, even if I had been raised in the church, or in the Catholic Church at least. And then I found the brand new scene in SoCal, and bands like Unashamed and Wish for Eden and Focused, and by the time I came into it, the Crucified had already broken out, but I really loved the Crucified, and so that planted the idea in my brain, because prior to that, that is a funny story. A friend took me shortly after becoming a born-again Christian, a friend took me to a Christian bookstore and started showing me music. I just thought it was the dumbest idea ever. Like, let's take all this stuff that's good and make it bad, so that Christians will buy it. That was what I thought. And then
that's like that South Park episode.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I could probably quote that episode, from front to back. But then I went to a show, and I saw some of these bands play, and I think it was Plank Eye and Focused were the headlining bands of that show. There's like 400 kids there, and I was like, wow, this is cool. This is real. This is good. I could do this, and it planted the idea in my mind. It was really out of that experience that Project 86 was started. Wow. Had we been a little bit more intentional, we probably would have been a little bit more selective about our early touring and even management and label decisions, perhaps. Yeah. I don't know. I really, Dustin's a friend of mine. I really admire the way that their band approached protecting their perception and the way that they built their band, coming out of the same area, almost the same group of friends, same city, but they went about it totally the mainstream route, or
it's interesting.
The underground mainstream route.
Totally. It's interesting how Thrice made that transition versus other bands that came out of that scene.
I feel like they were smarter than we were.
Well, Dustin is a pretty smart guy, so
yeah, he's a smart dude. Admittedly, for sure. Yeah, and I've looked at bands like that over the years and even felt jealous of man, if we had just been a little bit more careful about going so far down this road. But I don't have any regrets. We have an amazing fan base of people that continue to support the band to this day. And I'm able to do everything that I love creatively because of the support of our diehard fans. And while we may not be the headlining band at a festival, it's still impacting people, and I feel, as much as it's evolved and as much as we're veterans or old school or whatever, there's still, people out there across the world that are inspired by the music that is being made and the art that's being created. And that's the reason why I got into doing this. It wasn't to be the biggest band in the world. It was just to make stuff that I really enjoyed and to put on an honest live show that was fun for people to attend.
It sounds like you're at a place with Project 86 where you're able to kind of just do what you want and it
Yes.
makes sense financially. And we've talked to some other artists, and there's one particular artist that we've talked to where it's like, he was like, if I got any bigger, it would ruin my career because now I'm going to be answering to a bunch of other people. Where he's like, I'm right at this sweet spot where I'm able to make enough money where it makes sense for me. And also, it's not too big where I have to answer to anybody else. He's like, I'm right in this sweet spot. Do you feel like Project 86 is at that point right now where you're like not having to answer to anybody, but you're also able to like make enough money where you're able to do the things that you want to do with the band?
I think you articulated it really well. Never got into this to make money. Never really have made money. Carried, a lot of debt over the years, to be honest. Like,
yeah,
right up until recently. And it's been our Patreon community that's really made a huge difference. You can barely squeak by at this level, doing all the normal things, and then we add a podcast and a community to that to just get a little bit of a boost in the income, and that gives you just the ability to devote the time to things that are warranted without making them like an afterthought.
Sure.
That's what's hard is like, so a lot of guys have to do the day job, and then the music is a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
I always said that as long as I'm doing Project 86, I don't want it to be a hobby, because I think that compromises the thing, because then you're not able to devote the time to it that you need.
Yeah.
And so I've always said, if I can just get by doing what I do, and the fans have been willing to do that, and I feel like I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing, and it's expanded in recent history. And the support of the fans has enabled us to make the music that we wanted to make. We have a double album that's being finished right now. We're making a film that's entirely supported by the fans. It's an animated, kind of a hybrid animated film, kind of like a Frank Miller inspired approach. Doesn't look like a Frank Miller film, but I would say that's kind of the reference point. And I've written a fiction book surrounding this story with the new album, and I spend all my time working on those things, and it's really exciting, man, because I've always wanted to do everything that we're doing right now and never have had the opportunity. And the way you articulated that, I mean, when Project was on Atlantic Records, we had the management team, the business management team, the touring crew, and the bus, and the lawyer, and the big booking agents, plus all the label people, and we weren't able to make a living, at all, because you're paying everybody else
right
to do everything. And usually it equates to them not doing as good of a job on things as you would do yourself.
Of course.
So to streamline everything and to be in charge of most of the process at this stage of the game, and knowing what I want to accomplish, that takes years to finally figure out how to do everything in a way that is right for you. Whether that's using your voice and singing the way that you want to sound, or, setting up shows. Mm-hmm. Doing things this way works best for me. And this model works best for Project 86 at this stage. Took a long time to get here, but it's great, man. Super thankful.
Yeah. So you alluded to the new album. You talked about it a little bit. Omni is, in my opinion, your best work thus far.
Thanks, man.
And that's saying a lot, because like I still to this day think that the song Spy Hunter, for instance, is a perfect song. Like, like I have like
Thanks,
5 songs that I think are perfect.
5 in the whole world.
5 in the whole world.
Don't fear the Reaper.
Is that one of your 5, Cullen?
Like a Virgin. Like a Virgin.
All Star by Smash Mouth.
That's a good one. Ooh. I could keep going.
The Wheels on the Bus. No. I got a baby, so I'm listening to a lot of Wheels on the Bus right now. It's pretty good. It's a bop. Yes. But no, I think Omni is just absolutely incredible. It's so in depth, and I love the anger that's coming out that I've not necessarily heard like this from you before.
Oh, it's always been in there, bro.
Oh, I know it's always been there. But man, I don't know if it's like, your voice has gotten a little gruffer and maybe a little bit more matured or what the deal is, but man, it bites more, and
Thanks, man.
it feels darker, but it also feels so much more dynamic and so much more interesting, in terms of like a mature piece of music. I'm absolutely enthralled by it. And to add on top of that, these amazing music videos that you've done. I mean, wow.
Thanks,
Like,
dude.
they're incredible, man. I'm absolutely breathtaken by them. I love the content. I love the sounds. I love the dynamicism, all of it. I love it.
Well, thank you again. And that is super satisfying to hear somebody say those things, because there's been a lot of work and a lot of intention put into this. I'll try to touch on each of the things that you mentioned and comment on it. When you talk about like the anger, it's all the frustration built up over the years of wanting to make a heavier record and have a heavier sound. And since Drawing Black Lines, always ending up with rock records.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? And it's like, I'm not the one sitting there writing the riffs. And if I'm involved with the riffs, it's always me, working with the guitarist on that stuff. I'm definitely very involved in writing music, but at the same time, reliant upon the band to develop it. So over the years has always been some form, a compromise, or the meeting in the middle of the circles of the orbits of the individuals playing, right? And there's always been that thing inside of us, like, man, I watch my peers play really gnarly, heavy, aggressive, hectic music. And again, feeling jealousy for that, feeling that, I want to make those sounds, or listening to bands that I love, and going, I want to make music that makes people feel the way that this makes me feel.
Yeah.
So finally, we did the last one, album 10, Sheep Among Wolves. It was a rock record. Some great tracks on there, I think.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hit you, the way that this stuff does. And it took a couple years. Then we get into pandemic, and finally, I'm sitting there, I'm thinking two things. One, I don't know if my voice is going to handle this much longer in terms of just doing this kind of music. Although I did change the way I sang live about 10 years ago and started going heavier, ironically, to try to save my voice. But being told all on the way, and there's a lot of things I'm going to touch on here, but 20 years ago, when we were making Truthless Heroes, I developed a vocal cord nodule. And I was inches away from having surgery for that. I decided to forego the surgery because it was risky. If it doesn't heal right, you can lose your voice permanently.
Yeah.
Or have it be.
Can you explain to the listeners what that feels like, or what you experience with that? Because a lot of singers say that, but no one really knows, unless you've had it, what it feels like.
I've always pushed my voice too hard. So when it happened, I was coming down with some sort of sickness or had some sort of weird laryngitis or something. And I tried to sing through it, which meant pushing harder and harder and harder. I just felt something like basically give in my throat, or snap or pop. I just felt this sharp pain, and like I couldn't sing anymore. My voice wouldn't make noise. I felt it in like the side of my neck. So it was like a soreness radiating kind of outward from my vocal cords. And
it almost be like if you like snapped your ACL or something.
It wasn't quite as severe of a pain. Like it didn't hurt that bad. It's more just a feeling that something's wrong and your voice doesn't produce the right
It's a concern. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I ended up going to a doctor that took video of my vocal cords and showed me that I had a nodule, which is basically like a callus or like a bump that's in the middle of your vocal cords. And if you keep singing on it without treating it the right way or getting it removed, you can get a second one on the other side. I mean, they're just hard growths that develop on your vocal cords that impede them from closing. And your vocal cords closing and vibrating is what makes the sound of your voice. So you lose the middle of your range, which tends to be
the
your
most important
speaking voice.
Yeah.
Speaking voice and a lot of the notes that you form with, singing or shouting. So it's a very real thing. It's kind of like every singer's worst nightmare, and I got to live it out. I did like 6 months of like voice rest and speech therapy and vocal coaching and going to the doctor. It was a nightmare. And finally I was over it. I'm like, I'm never doing this again. So I'm just going to go try to figure this out on my own. So for 20 years, I never went back to the doctor and had everyone around me telling me, oh, dude, your voice is getting worse. Your voice is getting worse. Your voice is getting worse. Not that I sound worse, but it just sounds more raspy or whatever, you know? And
it's also called aging.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was real or if it was actually happening, but I was just terrified to go to the doctor for 20 years to get the bad news and then tell me you can't do this anymore. I always imagined that was on the horizon. So 75% of me announcing this is the final Project 86 album 11, was thinking about that. And then the other 25% was, I don't know what else to do creatively here. We've done 10 records. You know, what else can we do that we haven't done? Each successive record gets more, not frustrating, more difficult to write and make because we've set a pretty high bar. We've made some songs, some records over the years that people really love. We made one record that people really love, you know, Drawing Black Lines. And it's really hard to constantly not measure up to that. So I'm like, I want to do one more record, but I want it to be way heavier. I want to completely reinvent the thing, and I want to do all the things that I've always wanted to do that I never did. So I basically said, I'm not going to rest until this thing is what I want it to be, which is really dark, really angry, really dynamic, and kind of tells the story that I see about the world around me that I see is emerging. And that's what we did. And that's what Omni's become. And it turned into a double album, an animated film, and the film's not done, obviously, and a book that all fit together into one immersive experience.
Wow.
So I hope when it's all said and done, people point to this as the opus of Project 86.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something else. You know, maybe and this is what I'm thinking now, is like, I'll finish the story. So going into making this record, we got the music written for part one. Was just about to go into the studio, and I came down with COVID. And while I had COVID, I was in my car driving one day. I remember exactly where I was and what I was listening to. And I'll tell you in a minute because it's funny. And I'm one of those guys that sings along in my car loud.
I'm the same.
So
Love
I
it.
crank the music and sing along. And I'm doing this, and I felt that exact same feeling as 20 years ago when I was in the studio.
No.
It was the first day of vocal tracking on Truthless Heroes when I got the vocal cord. And I felt the exact same thing. And I said, oh, finally did it. I finally got a second nodule, and my voice is going to be destroyed before going and making this record. So I did everything for about 6 weeks that I was supposed to do, according to speech therapists and vocal coaches and such from years ago. You know, resting, not talking, doing certain vocal cord exercises, drinking tons of water, getting tons of sleep. All the things that have worked in the past, and it just didn't work. You know, 6 weeks later, I was no better. So I finally had to do the thing that I feared the most, and that was just go to the doctor, get the news of what was actually going on with my voice. So for about a week, I prayed about it and, you know, obsessed over it and resolved myself to the fact that I was going to get bad news and be told that I needed to end my singing career. Went into the doctor, they put a probe up your nose and film your vocal cords, and you get to watch in real time your vocal cords on video screen. And she showed me, and I kind of had my eyes closed. I was too excited to see. She's like, take a look. She didn't even say anything. And I looked to my left, and she's like, whatever you had going on before is gone. Like, your vocal cords look perfect. The only reason you're having problems is because you had COVID and you have some residual swelling in your throat. I wasn't ready for that.
Wow.
So the world started spinning around me. I walked out.
Like, the best news you could have gotten was you had COVID, which for a lot of people, like, that wasn't the best news you could have gotten. But the fact that that was the news you got was like, oh shit, that's a miracle.
Yeah, it was a miracle. I walked out. I didn't know what to do, man. I was not ready for that. The world was spinning around me. I was like, I feel like I've been given my life back, and I don't know what to do with it.
Did you feel like you were floating as you were walking?
Yeah, just floating. I felt like I was in some film where the camera spins around 360 degrees, you know, and I'm just standing there in the street with my arms out, you know, like, what do I do now? Who do I call? What do I do? And it was like a week of like shock.
You're gonna have to start thanking COVID.
Yeah, thank COVID. Just like That could be like the phrase that I say. Like,
What if that was like the vaccine for vocal nodules was just COVID?
COVID. Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. So I get in the studio, working with producer Bo Burchell, who's amazing. He also plays guitar in the band Seosin.
Yeah.
He's a fantastic producer and mixer. And went in, was working with him, and we got through the first song, I believe, which was Apotheosis. We did that one first, which is track 1 on the album. And the second song on track was Metatropolis. And I remember, we got through Apotheosis, but we couldn't really hear it because we had to do a lot of like assembly. There's a lot of stuff going on vocally in that song. So I didn't really hear it in a rough mix sense. Like, I didn't get to listen to it when I drove home. So the next day I came in, we did Metatropolis, and that one's a little bit more simplistic vocally. And I remember when I was tracking that song, he turned around, he said to me, he's like, man, I've listened to your band throughout most of the history. Like, I'm very familiar with it. He's like, I think this is by far and away the best you've ever sounded. And I said, man, this is the best I've ever felt in the studio. And I'm finally doing something heavier. And I finally feel like I've learned how to use my voice 25 plus years into this thing. And I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing finally. It took me this long to figure it out. I just can't describe the feeling. It's just incredible. It was better than any feeling I've ever had in the studio, ever, because of everything I've gone through prior to that. Yeah. Not just with my voice, but with the journey of the band too. And like creatively, like going into it feeling like, now I don't know what to do, and then just kind of following my heart in a way that I never had before, and sticking to my gut and my guns way more deeply than I ever had. And do, okay, no, I want it to sound like this. I'm not going to let anybody else sway me.
Can I just say that in all the years that I've listened to music, especially like kind of the heavier world of like metalcore, hardcore, all that kind of stuff, there was like a trend for a while where bands would like kind of experiment with like kind of softer stuff. And I love all of that. Like Cullen and I are big like post rock fans and everything.
Yeah.
But when there's a band that like is rooted in the hardcore world or metalcore world, anytime they went softer, I was like, I don't know about this. But anytime they went heavier, I was like, even if it meant that they like it was not going to be nearly as popular, I was like, that's the route that they should take because they sound better going heavier. And so whenever a band like makes that decision of like, actually, we're going to sound heavier here, even though it probably is not going to be sales wise really good for them, I think at least like in terms of their integrity and the way that they actually are really good, it's actually going to sound way better.
I mean, that's been my experience. When we were trying to write radio hits back in 2001, 2002, it just always felt like alien. It just felt like, this is not me. This is not my band. And it was like square peg round hole all the way. It's funny. We wrote Spy Hunter. we wrote that song as a part of going into the studio. Like we were on Atlantic at the time, and it was after Drawing Black Lines, and they wanted us to write some new music for a single, like a radio single for a film that was coming out. It ended up being the film Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg and Jennifer Aniston. We flew up to Vancouver, which is where we recorded Drawing Black Lines, went in with the same producer. And I remember we got in there, and there was this song that we had written that we were trying to do something more melodic, and it just wasn't very good. And then Spy Hunter was kind of the afterthought song that we recorded as part of that. Obviously, Atlantic hated it. It was like, oh, what is this crap?
They hated it?
Yeah, they just didn't know what to do with it. You know, they were just like, we asked for like a radio single. This is not a radio single. So it was like an afterthought of the session where we were supposed to be going in and writing a hit song, and that's the hit song that we got out of it. So that was our version back then of like, well, we couldn't write a hit, but we came up with this banger that's like aggressive and angry, you know? And I just always felt like that's kind of the soul of this band.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, this music for Omni is a lot darker. It's a lot heavier. My vocals are a lot more aggressive. The music's more aggressive. It's darker, and it just feels closer to my heart. And I think you can feel it.
Oh yeah. It feels like you're being more authentic than you ever have been. And that's such a strange thing, because you've always had this authenticity. I mean, Project 86 has always been the band that everyone knows is like, that's a band that says exactly what they're feeling. But this takes it to a different level. I'm curious to get your thoughts on some of like the content, um, visually as well as lyrically, with Omni, because it's something that I think is worth sharing.
Yeah, and I hesitate to use this word, but I don't have another word. There's a concept here, right?
Yeah.
And whenever you hear that, it's, it depends on who you're talking to, I guess. But over the years, if you say that word, you immediately think, oh, it's not the band's best record because they focused on telling some sort of rock opera story. And that, I can assure anyone listening that that's not the case here. But I feel like I'm at my best when I am not just painting a picture, but telling a story. And that's just how I think and write. And I've had this picture and this kind of story in my brain for a very long time. I don't know when. There wasn't a day that I woke up and felt like I had clarity on this, but it just feels like something that's been with me for a very long time. And I think the pandemic era sort of solidified it in my brain. It's like, oh, we're going to come out of this pandemic into a dystopian hellscape world that we're never going to come back from. And technology is going to start accelerating forward, and it's going to usher in some sort of new earth very soon. It may do it gradually, it may do it quickly, but there are a lot of scary things happening in the world around me. And I wanted to write a story about a character who's trying to navigate the old gods and the new, like the old world and the new, and everything that represents the technocracy that's emerging versus, the analog universe that we all lived in for so many centuries as human beings. So looking at all that, really it's a story about what would happen, or the question, what would happen if a big tech company came along and invented a way for humanity to live forever through technology.
Yeah.
And so Omni,
which is crazy, because if you gosh, I can't remember which scientist it was, very, very well-respected biologist and everything like that, says anyone who was born in 2019 or later will have the potential possibility, or will have like the potential to live forever.
Right. And so we're getting there quickly. And you're hearing more and more of these authorities on, biotechnology and physics and AI and how all of these things converge.
Yeah, nanotechnology and everything.
Yeah, nanotech is a huge thing involved in mRNA is a big part of it as well.
Definitely.
Where basically what we're seeing happen here is this. Not to get too biblical, but there's no way around it. In the book of Genesis, there's what I think is a very spooky moment that occurs that people usually kind of glaze over. And it's that God gave humans, and you could say this is a metaphor or not. I'm not interested in the theological debate on it. I'm just looking at the story that's being told.
Yeah.
God gives a command to humans that says, populate the earth. And instead of doing that, they came together and shared information. And they became smarter because of it, because they pooled their collective experience and data together to build something that was an attempt to do exactly what humanity is trying to do to this day, which is, reach heaven. What does that mean? It means live forever on our own terms. And we're seeing this come to fruition now. So there is, at least in a metaphorical sense, a reemerged Tower of Babel occurring in the world around us right as we speak. It really started occurring once we started sharing data via one global centralized computer network, right? Now we hold in our hands, I'm holding up a smartphone here, a supercomputer that is the collective of all accumulated knowledge that humanity has recorded, right, in our hands every day. And the very next step in our evolution, given the trajectory of all of this, is that this technology is going to be in here I'm pointing at my head, at my eyes. Soon. What happens when that happens? Well, we become hybrid, analog, and AI. We become something else, become a new species. So this is kind of what this Omni story is about, because I believe when that happens, we're talking singularity, and we're also talking eternal life. Now, it might not be eternal life in these bodies, you know what I mean? But eternal life of the consciousness. And we'll each probably be given the opportunity to partake in this, but what will be the consequences of it? That's what Omni is all about.
Can you, without getting like too nerdy into philosophical, I'm sure you're familiar with like the philosophy of transhumanism. Like, is that something that you explored in this album?
That's what's about. That term,
right?
Transhumanism is what Omni is about. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm kind of in this like place where I'm like, I feel like technology in a part has played into the human evolution. Like, without technology, humans would not have like evolved in the way that we have, like, even if it's
Right.
basic evolution, like developing fire or whatever.
Sure.
And also at the same time, there is a point where it's like, at what point do we no longer remain human because
Right.
of our relationship with technology in our human evolution? Or is that just always going to be a part of human evolution? It's a really weird, like, where's that fine line out? Where like, I don't know, but it is really interesting. And what I will appreciate about transhumanism, even though I have a lot of questions about it and a lot of concerns, what I do appreciate about it is the fact that it at least interrogates that question of, at what point do we no longer become human?
Definitely. And what does it mean to be human?
Exactly.
And that's another thing I'm really postulating in this story and in this exploration of these concepts, because I believe we have a nature as humans, right? The age-old philosophical debate is: are we inherent, or are we inherently evil? I believe that we will know that more than ever before. Not that we don't have a lot of accumulated data to point to make an argument on this, but I believe that if you were to remove the consequences of selfishness and the promise of mortality, that people would be free to do what they want to do. And what would they want to do? Well, I think they would want to do, we would want to do, I would want to do whatever I wanted. Right?
What is that? What is that for you? What is that for you personally?
It could be really ugly. And that's kind of the theory I'm putting out there on this. What would that look like for me personally? I can't. How would you be able to answer that? And that's the whole point. None of us can answer that honestly. Because I don't know. But the whole point, and again, not to get too biblical here, but again, it's hard to avoid it. I think that there is a presence in this world that restrains our carnal nature. And if you were to remove that restraint in the world, then you would get a much different world. And that world would be much darker in the way that we respond and treat one another.
Yeah. That thing in the world is your frontal lobe. Like the frontal lobe is what, that's what gives us, that's what separates us, right, from animalistic or carnal nature, right? So if we can evolve out of that to the point where our frontal lobe no longer has to be the thing that stops us from doing things that are considered selfish or non-altruistic, I would say,
right,
then that is what's ugly about it, right? I mean,
or conscience or consequence.
Well, can I add to that too? A few months ago, because you're talking about like specifically like a frontal lobe, which is like a biological, right? Like it's our part of our brain. I was talking to a theologian a number of months ago, and it was right when like the Chat GBT thing was like starting to become like everybody was talking about it and like knowing about it. We were having this conversation about like, is Chat GBT actually is it conscious itself?
Right.
And one of the things that I was talking with this theologian, and he does a lot of like science and theology stuff. He's like pretty well known in that world. And he had like pretty legitimate concerns about like it very well might be that Chat GBT is actually conscious. But one of the things I pointed out was like when we experience love, for example, like whether it's love with a spouse, love with a friend, whoever it is, whatever that experience that we understand to be love, how much of that is actually uh how much of our biology is necessary for us to experience love, like our some part of our lobe in our brain, like
Right.
how much is that lobe in our brain in the physical matter of that part of the brain necessary for us to experience love. And because ChatGPT, something like, you know, technology like that doesn't have that kind of biological uh, matter, is it able to actually experience love? It could say that it loves something, but that's very different than it actually experiencing love in the way that we do. And so I do wonder if there's something about, even though like our biological matter, like our frontal lobes, is what makes us, you know, do a lot of really shitty things in the world, it also is what potentially allows us to experience love,
It's also our filter as
and to
well.
be able to actually
Yeah.
love other people and love other things. And so I wonder how much of that biological matter actually makes how much of that is necessary for us to experience both the good and the bad in the world.
Or how much does the fundamental way that we react to the world change when we introduce a foreign presence into our consciousness, bodies,
Totally.
DNA,
Yeah.
bloodstream, whatever, you know, i.e., you know, augmenting or genetically modifying who we are with machine learning or algorithm.
Yeah.
Which is, we're right at the precipice of all that.
I just watched this video yesterday where this guy is sitting there and he's just wearing this small thing, but it's attached to his head. It's like a electrode kind of thing. And this interviewer starts asking him a bunch of questions. And what he's doing is searching for the question on a search engine through the internet with his mind.
There you go.
He wasn't putting in any like external like inputs or anything like that.
We're
It was
there.
all with his head. Yeah, we
are there.
Yeah.
We don't realize it because we're not each doing it, but we're there.
Yeah.
It's like when you're like, I need new glasses, and then like, and you think that, and all of a sudden, like, you get ads on like Instagram for new glasses, and it's like
we're super close, dude. That kind of stuff happens.
It's like I'm not even saying that out loud. I'm just thinking that, and Amazon already knows.
Right. Yeah, we're closer to all this than we realize. So not to
and
go
that's
too,
why Omni is such an important album.
Yeah, not to go so far down. Yeah, to reel it back in or whatever. I just wanted to write a record that looks at what's going on in the world and focuses in on technology as an expression of mankind's collective consciousness and nature, and see where it's all headed. And so develop a story surrounding that. And it's a sci-fi horror show, man. It's a dark piece of media, but it's been really fun to work on. We're you mentioned music videos. We're 4 music videos into 12 total, so we're a third of the way through, and we're going to make a music video for every song on Omni Part 1 and connect it all with narration, basically make a film, a visual album that tells the story, that connects directly with this fiction book that I've written. It's also titled Omni. It's all titled Omni. So hopefully those that are interested in going a little deeper into this thing can dive in and really go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Just like we were. I mean, I know you didn't want to go down the rabbit hole about like Spy Hunter or, you know, Drawing Black Lines, but we could go down the rabbit hole about transhumanism all day, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about, and it's real for all of us, even if it's not on the forefront of our minds at all times.
I think the only thing
because we're not paying attention, you know.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think the only thing that you need to do in order to complete the multimedia experience that you're establishing here is get a Dodge Omni.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen those?
Yeah.
Great little fuel efficient cars. They're beautiful.
I have, yeah. I didn't even think about that. I mean, that was the word that popped in my head. It was like, well, what would this tech company be called?
Yeah.
Like Omni. And then our artist, I gotta give a shout out to Donnie Phillips. He's doing the packaging, right? The album cover and such. And he developed this logo that says Omni vertically, OMNI. And it's a man flying, like ascending, basically. Which I was like, oh my gosh, dude, you captured it with that.
Yeah.
You captured it.
Love that.
So yeah, man, we're actually gearing up here. We just played a couple of shows this last weekend. August 17th through the 20th, we're doing a big shoot in LA for the film, and we'll be at Furnace Fest next. We'll be playing on Friday the 22nd. So if anyone listening wants to join us and be part of this thing, we will be playing some new material. We don't have a super long set, so we're gonna have to pull out all the bangers and just rock as hard as we can for. I think we're on stage like 40 minutes.
Can we expect at least like a song or two from Omni?
Oh yeah. We'll be playing either 2 or 3 from Omni.
Okay,
perfect.
I gotta say that Metatropolis is probably my favorite song to play live of all time. It really is a thing now that I'm feeling. I just don't understand. I can't articulate what this is all going to look like moving forward. But it really feels like albums 1 through 10 were one thing, and this is something new. Something fresh. It sounds new. It sounds fresh. So one idea I had was if people are really feeling the story and really get into the extra stuff beyond the music, the film, the book, that we can make this into like a series, and something we can continue to explore. Again, for my band, it's the fans that make these decisions. If enough people are into it and want to get behind it, financially, but also just in the support sense all across the board, then I keep making this stuff. And for me, this whole thing leaves off on an unresolved plot point on several fronts. So I left it open-ended on purpose if we want to keep going. And I'm really happy with how the story has come out in the book and where it's going with the. So I think people are going to be really stoked. It definitely propels what people have known from me in the context of the project to another level.
For sure.
Well, hopefully you get enough funding throughout the years that you can at least get to the point where you tell the story about the end of the universe, whether it's going to be a big crunch, big expansion, whatever it might be.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Well, we're super stoked to see you at Furnace Fest. I mean, it's just going to be such a fucking unbelievable show. Also, that lineup that Friday is going to be nuts. So we're just super stoked that you are going to be a part of just probably one of the better days of a lineup at Furnace Fest in its history.
Oh, that's cool, man. Yeah. And it's fun that we get to play of the 3 days, the first day. I love playing the first day of a festival just because you get that raw, fresh energy from everybody in attendance. And I hope people come out, man. Like, I hope the people, obviously we've got a remnant of people that are still really attached to the band, that are up to date. But I know that there's a lot of periphery out there, good band, that maybe listened to us, 5 albums ago or 7 albums ago or whatever. That liked the band, but maybe just didn't stick with us along the way, or maybe they just didn't like what we started coming up with later on in the catalog or whatever. My hope is that we can reel some of those people back in and also, say hello to some new folks as well that maybe never heard the band or seen the band before. I'm really looking forward to it. Furnace Fest is such a unique event, at least from the outside. I've never been there. But
it's wild. Just
from what I've been told from other bands and who've played, and just seeing footage and stuff online, like it's gonna be really cool.
It absolutely is gonna be nuts. Are you planning on sticking around at least like another day or two after your show?
I think so. I would say 75% sure on that. Okay. It kind of comes down to the guys that I'm traveling with, because I live in Southern California, but everyone that I work with is in Nashville, which is really close to Furnace Fest.
Right. Yep.
So it comes down to whether or not everyone wants to, stick around or just get back to their families and their lives quickly.
Totally.
I usually kind of default to whatever those guys are.
Well, at least on Friday, because you know you're gonna be there Friday, are there any bands that, you haven't seen or you're looking forward to seeing, that maybe you haven't seen before, that you would or maybe you have seen before and you just
I
haven't
have
seen
to
for a while or whatever, but yeah, are there any bands that you're looking forward to seeing at least that Friday?
let me pull up the website here.
I mean, that Friday lineup is pretty sick, so, I
Yeah.
mean
See here. Furnace Fest 2023 Friday. I've glanced at this, but I don't have it. Okay, so Hatebreed, Amberlin, Riot K, Throwdown, Co-op Raid, Gideon, Holy Wars, Hopes Fall. There's a lot of good bands on this. Kid Liberty, Knuckle Puck, Made Aware, 90 Pound Boys, No Cure, No Trigger, Norma Jean, Open Hand, Orthodox, Piebald, Project 86, Qualifier, Showbread, Slow Pulse, The Undertaking, Walls of Jericho, Witset, Blood Comes Cleansing, With Honor, and Bane FM. Okay, if I was going to pick, I want to watch Throwdown. Used to be friends with those guys. I haven't talked to them in years. They used to rent our practice space from us. We had a studio
Oh, really?
Whoa,
in
sweet.
Irvine, and so yeah, they're nice guys. I like their music too. Definitely want to watch them. Hatebreed, that would be cool. Norma Jean, good buddies.
Yeah.
Definitely be cool to watch them. Got to give a shout to Grayson and Corey and Matt.
Great people.
And Michael.
Great people.
Yeah, for their help on this project.
Wait, what did they do with you? Oh, I know Corey sang a song and everything.
He did a guest vocal, but they were basically my, except for Darren and Bo. I had a huge production team on me, but they were totally involved in most of the process.
So
actually, how this album started was Corey and I were talking on a call, just hanging out on a FaceTime call, or I think maybe I texted him or something, and I said, "Dude, why don't I have you on a song?" And he was like, "Well, why don't we write a song together?" And that led to me talking to him further. I was like, "Well, dude, I'd love to have you be involved in this thing in whatever way that you would desire and feel inspired to." He was like, "Well, let me connect you with some folks, that I work with." And it just kind of went from there. I was really good friends with Matt Putman, who used to play alternate percussion in Living Sacrifice. He and I haven't talked in years, and that's Corey's brother. And so we got together with him. It was Grayson, Corey, Matt, and I, and wrote the bulk of Omni together. It wasn't
know that.
It wasn't without help from Darren, who plays guitar in my band, and who he and I worked on the last two project records together. And Bo, who had a lot to do with the finished product, Omni Part 1. I'm just talking about Part 1 here. Part 2 has been different. It's been myself, Darren, Matt, and this guy named Michael.
Sure.
But yeah, man, that whole camp was a part of this thing. And
I didn't know that.
When we got to, when I started talking to Corey about it, he's like, "Dude, let me help you just execute your vision." And I was like, I've never had anyone say that to me before. I'm like, I love this conversation. So yeah, man. Kind of got outside the circle of talent here and pulled in a lot of other people to work on this thing. On Part 2,
well, I've never made an album, but I will say if I were to execute some vision with somebody, it would be Corey Brandon. I mean, that dude knows how to make a fucking album.
Yeah, I mean, he's so good at what he does. He writes great lyrics. He's a great vocalist. He's a multifaceted vocalist. So he's a singer, yeller, and he's got a lot of diversity within the things that he does. He's also, very concept oriented, visual, or like he just is good at everything. Definitely. So, yeah, I was just like, here's what I want to do. I literally drew it on a whiteboard for him. I was like, here's the story, here's how it goes, here's what this whole thing's about. It's like, I love it. Let me help you. Kind of went from there. So
that's sick.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I really wanted to be careful that it didn't end up being like a Frankenstein monster between his band and mine. And I don't think that's where we ended up.
Not at all.
I think we ended up with something unique, and really happy with it. Really happy with it. Can't give enough love. Shout outs to all those dudes.
Yeah.
I love it.
Unbelievable.
We better get into top 5 most influential so that we can let you get out of here in a reasonable time. So top 5 most influential albums. Andrew, are you ready?
Go.
All right.
This
Let's
is
hear
me.
it.
Yeah, this is you,
Top
man.
5 most influential records. Number 1, I have to put Beastie Boys' License to Ill.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Very cool.
All
I
right.
like it.
That was like the first record I ever loved. It's the first band I was ever a fan of. Like, actual fan of the band, where like I imagined myself meeting them, or, you know, fantasized about like being them. You know what I mean? Beastie Boys' License to Ill. That was a big one. Let's think. Okay, so we're talking influential, like influential on my like future music career type
your
thing.
life, your music,
Okay.
your thoughts on life, however you want to say it.
Gosh, it's so hard, dude. You know, I've had this whole time to think about this that we've been talking about. So I haven't narrowed it down. That's the first one. I would say from there, because we're talking like 5th, 6th grade on that.
There you go.
I would move ahead later into older Andrew. I'm trying to think of records.
I like that you go somewhat chronologically. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of records like from the 90s, because that was like the big era of my music fandom. Like my teen years and early 20s, like the 90s. Dating myself there. Records that really influenced things. Okay, I have to go Super Unknown by Soundgarden. That's a really good
after
one.
my heart,
You're
man.
speaking to Cullen right now.
That's like a timeless record, man.
Yeah.
Timeless record.
So weird, but so great.
Yeah, and it still sounds awesome. It
does.
I love to put that on for people who didn't really, you know, either who aren't old enough or who just didn't listen to that kind of music back then. And they say that it's like a grunge record. And I'm like, I don't hear that at all.
No,
Mm.
it's a psychedelic metal record.
Yeah, it's like, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, Andrew, one thing, if you should know anything about Cullen, he can do a great Chris Cornell.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna ask you to do it, but that's hard to do, man.
Yeah.
Cullen will go from like Chris Cornell to like Whitney Houston. I mean, he can like, it's pretty impressive. His karaoke prowess is rather good.
I would love to hear that. You know, we did a cover of this is blasphemous, I think, but I wanted to do your audacity of it, of Fell on Black Days.
Yeah.
We actually recorded a cover of that song.
Is that released?
It's on an EP that we did that was kind of an exclusive EP on one of our crowdfunded records. It was like 2 albums ago, I believe. It's available just on the Project 86 web store. If you just go to our website, there's like a digital store on there.
It is on YouTube.
Is it on YouTube?
Yeah, it looks like there's somebody uploaded on YouTube.
Yeah, I think it came out cool. I was listening to it recently, and I was like, you know what? This came out all right.
I dig it.
It's really hard to sing. It took me so long to record that. It was really hard. But yeah, Soundgarden, Super Unknown. I would say if I could lump them together, both Portishead records.
Oh, wow. All right. Yeah.
I just fell in love with that band in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think the year that I found them was like 99, so it was a little after the fact. I had heard of them, but I had never listened to them. When I found them, I was like, this is my favorite music I've ever heard in my life, because it was like haunting and dark, but not like it just, I always loved electronic music as well. So it kind of, it was like, it was noir. It was just so cool. When I found that band, I was like,
yeah.
What else? Okay, we got to move forward a little bit out of that. We need 2 more, right?
Yep.
Right.
Records that have really affected me as a person, as an artist. I'm just trying to think about it. It's funny. I started vinyl collection, and I said I'm only going to buy 100 records, and they're going to be the 100 records that have changed me. So I'm going through my mind of that list. The ones
That's
that
a
I bought
brilliant way to
and
do
haven't
things.
bought. Because I want to be able to close my eyes and pick a record and have it be awesome. You know what I mean? No matter what record it was. So I'm trying to think of all the records that I've bought so far and the ones that I'm missing.
Are those that are there behind you? Over your left shoulder?
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
So if I have to pick, there's got to be a heavy record right in there somewhere. I'm trying to stay away from like super obvious tunes like Master of Puppets. You know what I mean?
Dude,
like
sometimes the obvious is the right choice though.
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, when I was in junior high and early high school, Metallica was definitely the band. Yeah, like so many other people, and I think
that's probably the most talked about one on here. I would think.
Yeah,
Jimmy Eat World is probably the other one.
Jimmy Eat World, interesting.
Yeah,
I wouldn't. I like Jimmy Eat World, but I wouldn't have picked them. Okay, I've got one. I've got a record. It would be, and this is an obscure one for this band, but this was the record that really sold me on them. Believe it or not, it was "How It Feels to Be Something On" by Sunny Day Real Estate.
Very good.
Oh God! Which I don't even know if I think that's their best record now. Which I would probably lean to no, but it was the timing of it.
Yeah.
And what I was going through in my life at the time, the lyrics and the songs, and we were just starting to tour when it came out. So we would listen to that on the road over and over and over again. And it was just magic, man. There's something
You're
about
speaking
that.
to me now. I just saw them a few months ago, and I think they started the set with I don't remember song titles at all, but it was definitely the first song on How It Feels to Be Something On.
Killers,
and God, so unbelievable. That was probably incredible. for my 2023 year of seeing bands, that was probably like the most it was a concert that I was really looking forward to, but it was like the one that like blew me away the most so far.
Yeah. I saw them in 2005, 6, something. It was like the first read. I mean, maybe it was 2007, 2008, somewhere around there. But like mid to late aughts, right? And it was when they had been broken up for however many years and first got back together. Man, that was one of my favorite.
That album is unbelievable.
It's great.
One of my favorite shows ever. Okay, I have to pick one more.
You got one more
album.
And I will say, you are probably setting up Mason and I's favorite album list to date.
This
one good so far.
This
is pretty good so far.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting all the bases, man.
Okay, this one may be left field for you guys. This is more. I have to pick something that's a little more modern.
The Outfield.
And this is probably no good one. One of my two current favorite bands is this band, and their first record was really life altering for me.
Okay,
and it's not that old. It's a band called Health, and it's their first record.
Health.
So you probably don't even know the band.
No.
They are kind of a really contemporary take on almost like industrial music. But they do it in a really cool way that doesn't make it sound dated.
What's the album that you're talking about again?
I believe their first album is called Death Magic.
So that's their third album, actually.
No.
At least according to...
Hold on, let me look here.
According to Wikipedia, it's their third album. They have a couple others before then. But Death Magic is definitely one of their albums.
I love that.
This looks really interesting, though.
Oh, they're great, man. Okay, so 2015.
Yep.
Is when that one came out. And it looks like, I guess they have released stuff prior to that. I mean, everyone that I know who listens to them, we all refer to it as their first record and don't consider anything before that.
Okay.
But I think it's just that was the record that I found. You know what I mean? And they put out a ton of stuff since then. It's all really good, but that record just moves. It's so good. It's melodic, so it's not like a screaming vocal.
Okay.
The guy's voice, just sounds like an emotionless computer. And the music is so heavy without being heavy in the guitar sense. You just have to listen to it. It's just it's really cool.
What an interesting way to describe a singer. Just emotionless. That sounds so intriguing.
He sounds emotionless. Like he sounds like he's not human, and it's haunting and amazing. It's really cool.
Sweet. I'm totally in on the intrigue here. Gonna check it out.
The way you're describing this album, I'm sure like the sound is very different and everything, and certainly the singer is very different. But there's a band called The Antlers.
Okay.
And they have a song. They have an album called Hospice, which is actually like a concept album about this, like the like front man or the lyric writer like visiting a person who's dying in hospice.
Yeah.
But it's not like a heavy, like it's not metal or anything. It's just like it's like indie rock. But the way that they produce the album makes it sound so heavy and haunting. And so the way you're describing this Health album really sounds similar to Hospice by The Antlers.
I would say that Health is an indie rock band as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sweet.
they definitely have that aesthetic going on. But they also,
if you're looking for like another like heavy haunting album that is like not actually heavy music, I really recommend The Antlers and specifically their album Hospice. It's just like such a haunting album.
Okay, I'm pulling it up.
Sweet.
It's so good.
When I say heavy, like it's emotionally heavy, but it's also heavy like electronic production. So it's like just thick and nasty and dirty, and like if you have a sub, it's just rumbling your entire home or car or whatever. It's just insane. Anyways,
I'm into it.
Well, I'm definitely going to check them out. That's awesome. Well, Andrew, that is a great list. Even though we don't really know who Health is, we're definitely gonna have to check them out. But that is a great list, and in a lot of ways, you can really hear a lot of that throughout Project 86, which is really cool. It's always really cool to hear like some of those influences of albums and artists that like different musicians have, and then like actually hear that in their own art too. It's always really cool to hear that.
Yeah, man. I mean, you start out with, and thank you. You start out doing this thing because you're a music fan.
Yeah, 100%.
So you have to retain that, kind of childlike attachment to music throughout, the process of trying to make your own. And I think that's what inspires you to keep moving forward is when you find like new bands or new records. So I love
totally. Absolutely. Well, what do you want to plug? Obviously, the first part of Omni came out in March, so it's been a few months that it's been out. And then the second part, is there a time that we could maybe expect the second to come out?
Yeah, we're looking at October to release part 2 of Omni, and the double album will have 23 songs. Part 1 is a little bit more cinematic. Part 2 is a little bit more bangers. Like it's pretty much all bangers. And it's composed of 2 EPs. One is a little bit more digital leaning EP. The other is a little bit more metal. It's really, really, really aggressive. As much as Omni Part 1 is the heaviest thing we've ever done. This is a little bit more, I'd say if Omni Part 1 is a little more doomy, this is a little bit more experimental metal, like a little faster. You know what I'm saying?
Sweet.
Not a lot faster. A lot more double bass and fast drum work and such. It's just nasty. It's really, really nasty. And then the digital side, it's kind of taking some elements of like, I guess the more classic PD6 sound and digifying it a little bit more. So it's definitely, both parts are unique. Okay. And they sort of represent the polar ends of what LP1 is, part 1 is. So if you think about Omni as a triangle, which is part of the logo on the album, it's kind of like the top of the triangle is LP1 and the 2 sides on the bottom or the 2 corners on the bottom are the 2 EPs of LP2. So we want to plug that. That's coming out in October. If you want to hear more, visit project86.com. You can pre-order the new record on vinyl, CD, cassette, new merch and such. That's going to close at the end of August. And we'd love to have you guys check out our new music videos that are a small part of the forthcoming Omni film. It's hard to say. And that's just youtube.com/project86 video.
Love it.
For sure.
That's so exciting. Yeah, it's only like a couple months now that it's the second part's going to come out. So exciting.
Yeah.
I'm pumped, man. Pumped. We're mixing it right now. Almost finished.
Killer.
Love it. Love
And
it.
we got Furnace Fest. Are there any other shows we can be looking forward to?
Actually, we haven't announced it yet, but we're very close to confirming the first weekend of November for our album release show for Omni.
Nice.
So
Great.
both parts will be out by then, and then we can get together and really explore playing a lot of that music live.
Fantastic.
That will be in Nashville, and we're also thinking about live streaming it. So
please do.
Basically saying, come see us in person if you can. If you can't, then we'll let you watch online.
Sweet. We can. Is it like a pay-per-view kind of live stream?
We haven't decided what platform we'll host it on yet. We just did it on YouTube last time and sold tickets for it.
Perfect.
And then, broadcasted it in whatever highest resolution possible.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm in.
Love it. Love it. Andrew, anything else you'd like to plug?
I think that's it, man. It's enough, right?
Yeah.
We've got, the Omni double album, the Omni film and music videos dropping. Got a book that is coming out as well around the same time. And then we've got an alternate reality game that the fans created at omnicorp.one.
Sweet.
omnicorp.one.
Love it.
Awesome.
Love it. Great. Well, we're super stoked to see you at Furnace Fest. It's just going to be such a hell of a time. And so thank you so much for chatting a little bit about the history of Project 86, kind of like your mind around the new Omni album and kind of what you're thinking about. It's just super excited just to hear you talk about like some of the exciting things that are going on with that album and the fact that you're making some of the heaviest stuff that you've ever made. And so, yeah, we're just super stoked to see you soon. And yeah, congrats on the new album and congrats on the upcoming album here in just a couple months.
Appreciate it, guys. And thanks for the time. And thanks for having me on. Looking forward to seeing you guys at Furnace Fest.
You got it, man.
We'll be there.